Hi, welcome to our next lesson here at the Colorado Model Railroad Museum. My name's Michelle.
And I'm Misty. Thank you for sticking with us. If you have been waiting for this live event, we do apologize for the wait and are very excited to have you here. We're very excited about what we'll be doing today. Paleontology. We'll be learning a lot about paleontology, and you might hear the wind there might be some background noise of the wind. And we're very excited and thankful to have our friends, the Greeley Station, producing this for us again today. The purpose of the Greeley Station is to bring businesses and individuals and organizations together. So thank you so much, Greeley Station.
Yep, thank you, Greeley Station. We also have an actual sponsor for these two with Richmark. Richmark Properties here in Greeley has sponsored these kits, so we thank them too.
Absolutely.
So we're talking paleontology. That's a big word.
It is.
Paleontology. So what it means is the science of basically fossils.
Right. And when we think of fossils, I think of dinosaurs.
Yeah.
But fossils is more than dinosaurs, right?
Right. So paleontology is what we call the study of basically the history of the Earth based on the fossilized evidence of what's there. So what's a fossil? A fossil is what remains behind after a plant, an animal like a dinosaur, fungi, bacteria, single-celled things, all living things, when what they leave behind becomes fossilized. So
and when we talk about what they leave behind, can poop be a fossil?
I don't know. We're going to find out in a little bit.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
So sedimentary rock is really kind of the main area that we find fossils in, and I actually have an example.
Yes, you have some great examples.
And so America, most of it was underwater at one point in time.
Yeah, a lot of Earth was, right?
Right. And so I was out when I was a child with my dad in Wyoming hiking, and we found this rock. And this rock, I doubt you can really see up close on the camera, but this rock is made up of seashells.
Yes.
And so
we'll get a zoom in.
This rock is made of sedimentary rock. So the way that these fossils form is that you can see there's a black shell right here. So that shell was down, and then this shell that's white over top of it laid on top of it. And then more things went down, and more things, and sand and shells and sand and shells, and all these layers compressed, and just the pressure of the weight as it builds up presses it, and it becomes rock. So this one right here is an actual whole entire seashell. You can see its spiral goes this way around the edge. And it is sticking out of this particular rock. So this is like a really cool example of so many seashells piled together in a rock.
How many seashells would you guess that are in there?
Lots. Because there's one here, here. And then there's
some
little
tiny ones.
Little parts all over. And then the rest is rock holding it together. I also have this whole rock right here. And you can see really well the kind of orangish colored seashell on the edge of that. You can see that different colored area right there is a seashell attached to this rock.
That's amazing.
Also found in Wyoming.
Wow.
Just about 2 hours north of Greeley. So.
There are live digs going on in Wyoming, I understand, too.
There are. And Colorado, like our whole region along the Rocky Mountains are full of fossils.
What a phenomenal adventure that would be.
So that was kind of a fun one. So let's talk about some of the fossils we have. So we have some examples not found locally, but just so that we can look at them. And we have some fun facts. So one of our facts is that sharks are over 60 million years old.
Yeah, and really importantly, what I learned too is until the 1660s, which was a long time ago, 1660, who was alive then? Not anybody I know.
Some explorers.
So, yes, they found shark teeth. And according to some of the first findings of these shark teeth, they didn't know they were shark teeth until later on, and they used to call them tongue stones. Now, if you take a look at those, I guess, this one, that could look like a tongue. But, here today, we really do know this is,
that's some dirt on that one.
I'm going to have to do a little bit of excavating. Ooh. This is in some sandstone. This is one of the, sandstone is a sediment that really helped form around fossils here. But yeah, this here is a shark tooth in sandstone. And as Michelle said, sharks were around for over 60 million years ago. And there are some sharks that were pretty darn big that, would eat today's sharks for like a French fry.
This is a pretty large tooth right here.
Yeah. One of them is called a megalodon. I wouldn't want to meet a megalodon, that's for sure, or any shark for that matter. But yeah, this is a really, oh my goodness. And if you ever felt a shark tooth, you could see how one could easily, how easily it would hurt very, very quickly. So sharks are sharks today are related to sharks that were around over 60 million years ago.
They're not that much different.
They're not.
So that's kind of a dinosaur animal that you can see from the past. Another one that we have today are what we call snails.
Yes.
But in the past they were called gastropods, and they are probably the oldest of fossilized creatures. And I have some examples here. And here's one right here. This is actually one in the rock that I had found. We have some in here that are two different kinds. The kind that looks like a snail shell, and that's called a gastropod. And then the ones that are more rock like this are ammonites.
Those are beautiful.
Yeah, and they often become jewelry, like this piece of jewelry that I'll talk about in a minute. Here's a different style, which is more like this one, that long spinning out shell instead of the more compact, tightly spiraled shell. It's more of a pulled out shell. Mm-hmm. And so those are all called gastropods. And we have a picture here of what that would look like. But they're basically snails.
Yeah.
And they would leave that shell behind, and then that shell becomes fossilized. So
now,
we know they existed.
That shell. Is that shell similar? Do you think we
that
have?
looks like this one.
It does. Look at that. Ew, wow.
So that looks like this shell. You can kind of picture that. So.
Those are awesome. Those are so neat. Well, one of the things is oftentimes this is something we eat, is a clam.
Yep.
But clams have been around for a little while. They still exist today, of course. Some people enjoy clams for a meal, a tasty appetizer or a side dish. But can you see how a clam might last over time? Because clams live under the sand.
Right, and inside their shell.
That's right. That's right.
The shell remains.
They're very safe, and they're very safe and sheltered. So this would explain, I'm not sure how long they've been around, 500 million years ago. That would explain it. They are secured not only in their shell, but their outer environment. So yeah, this is one of my favorite things to look for when we go to the beach.
Another one like that is sea urchins, and I'll pull that one out next. We'll put these over here. Sea urchins are a very similar kind of thing, except they're round animals with a slightly hard shell, but not as hard as a snail shell. And these are whole ones here. And they're still around today, just as they were back then.
Right.
So those are whole little sea urchins that have been fossilized right there. That's kind of a fun one.
Well, this one here, this reminds me of a piece of jewelry. Speaking of jewelry, you had mentioned. But
that one's been polished so we could see it.
We could see it nice and close, and we'll see here. You can see, this is probably about the size of 2 quarters, side by side. So yeah, that's to give you an idea as the actual size of that. Of course it doesn't look like this, but this little guy probably did, but it is a species of this. And these are called Orthoceras, and they've been around for 450 million years. They were around for 450 million years ago. This is really quite something. If you look at this side here, it looks all rock, like petrified.
And then you can see when you polish it, you can really see the detail.
Absolutely. So that's a very interesting piece.
Let's talk about the
as we talk about petrified wood. Oh, somebody's calling the museum. So this looks like a rock at first glance, but really this is petrified wood. Once a tree or a branch that has been petrified, and I tell you, it is as heavy as a rock.
So the same things happen. The wood gets crushed into the sediment in the rock and becomes rock with the pressure.
Now, where I come from in eastern Washington, we find, well, Washington itself, we find a lot of petrified wood. And petrified wood has been around, since I think the early days. And so it's really interesting because this is a natural, just like fossilization, this is a natural element that happens over time. So I don't know if this is something that could be done today without, do you think, this is just completely off the subject a little bit, but do you think you could they have a machine where you could petrify things?
I do not think so.
No, okay. But look at that. I know, I told you it was completely off my curiosity. I'm going to have to look that up.
It's all right. It's a good question.
Yeah.
A very good question.
So, if you have any questions as we're going along today, please don't hesitate to ask.
So now I'm going to talk about my favorite one.
Yes.
And these look very, very nondescript, these two little rocks right here. But these are actually dinosaur bones. And we don't know exactly what kind of dinosaur, but they do know that it's bone. And if you could see up close, you would see that there's like texture in there from like the ligaments of your muscle and what bones are actually made of, kind of a fibrous material. And you can see the fibers in there. And so these are both dinosaur bones. And I happen to have, because I love paleontology, my mother bought me a dinosaur bone necklace where it's been polished. So you can see the raw dinosaur bone here and a polished dinosaur bone here in this necklace.
Yeah, it's a huge difference.
So I actually have a ring on too of dinosaur bone, and it's kind of a reddish color. I don't know why. I think that's a question we should study and figure out. But that's something really interesting that you can turn these into into jewelry.
Yes. Could you take a mom up for adoption?
Just like the ammonite, a lot of people turn them into jewelry too, those polished snails. So yeah, so there we go. That's kind of some different kinds of fossils. There's so many kinds and so many things you can learn.
There is one that we kind of flipped a coin as to who was going to be able to who was going to touch it. And it's called Cropperlite. Copperlite. Yeah.
Copperlite.
Also known as poop.
It is a fossil.
It is
I can
a
answer
fossil.
Mistie's question.
Yes, it is a fossil.
Can you find
and
it
what is it that you think we learn? What is it you think we might learn from poop? What somebody ate, their diet, how they survived.
Right.
Were they a herbivore or a carnivore? Those are the things we get to learn from the feces, poop. So poop counts. Poop matters.
Also an important fossil. There you go.
I talked about poop today.
So I have one more thing to talk about before we do our craft, and this is a local story. This is some railroad ballast, like you would see by the rail. And Misty was asking me earlier, how do you know that's railroad ballast, and what is ballast?
Right. I didn't know.
So when you see train tracks, there's the rail, and the rail sets on wooden ties that cross it, right? Like if I drew it on here, here's rail, and then you have ties like this, and they're wooden. And rail is usually raised a little bit from the ground, and this all needs stability to be stable. So they use rocks like this that are usually kind of square-edged. They're a real scratchy rock. They're not smooth and round like playground rock.
The size,
like the stuff you find in a playground or usually in your landscaping or smooth round rocks. So these are meant to stick to each other and pile up and be tight and tough and be strength to hold these ties in place.
Right.
So that's railroad ballast. Well, a local railroad man had found this piece broken open, and he happened to look in it, and there's a picture of this in the kit, but there's actually a plant in here. There's a fossilized plant in here, and it's probably hard to see on this camera, so that's why we did the photo for you. But there is a fossilized plant in there. So fossils are in places you don't always expect, but sometimes when you break a rock open, there they are. And
that was found right here in Platteville, Colorado, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so, locally.
And I think what's really important to understand is because it's rock, it has moved. So just because it was found in Platteville,
the ballast could have come from anywhere.
It could have come from anywhere, Wyoming or anywhere. So yeah.
So there we go. That's another interesting fossil.
Absolutely. That is so cool.
One of my favorite things about being a paleontologist and living fossils is that no matter where you go, there's some kind of thing that you can study there, look at the rocks where you're at.
Plants are alive.
They're all over our country, all over the world.
And if you want to take a little bit deeper dive into paleontology, we found this book on Amazon for under $10. This is a great read. It talks about some of the first paleontologists and how paleontology came to be, and an introduction to geology, in which we will be doing a kit on later this summer. So,
and we will have that in our gift shop pretty soon.
We will. I'm very excited about it. Yes, it's a copy that I've wrote in and folded pages.
So now let's do our activity.
Absolutely.
You should have in your kit a fossil.
Dun, dun,
we have little tiny dinosaurs. fossils. And so there's texture on this. You can see it because it's raised, right? Mm-hmm. And that is like finding a fossil in the ground. And so today we're going to do a rubbing. It should be
so it's just as simple as taking a sheet of paper, covering your fossil
with the paper.
Now the really fun thing about this is you can do this with even a leaf or other items even around the house. So
anything with a texture you can do this activity with. And a rubbing is a way to preserve something without taking it out of the ground. If you saw this as you were hiking somewhere and you wanted to kind of take the image of it home with you, you could pull out paper and crayon and rub it and take that with you.
Now to rub it means
and leave the thing there. Now I peeled the paper off my crayon earlier because it took me a long time.
I didn't get the memo.
Standard crayon without paper. I just peeled it because I wanted to do it kind of sideways. And then, so I'm going to start. See, when you do it sideways with that flat surface, you'll get just the top edge of your image. I don't know if you can see that I'm getting just the neck. And then here I'm going to get the ribs. And then once you find the outline with your big crayon, and you can do it with the top.
All right.
But once you find the outline, you can get more detailed with the point of your crayon. You can really get in there and find those details. But I usually kind of just start with the edge and see what we get. I guess there's more dinosaur down here. Oh, he's got a long tail here. And there, you can see my dinosaur. What do you think? Can you see it? There you go. Kind of fun. You can look around your house for other things to do. Misty's about done with hers.
Well, that looks like a dinosaur. That's a piece of cool art in motion. It's abstract. It's an abstract dinosaur.
But you can kind of see the outline. You see the ribs and stuff.
So if somebody, what is something around your house that would describe you? Can you find something like maybe TV remote that would tell us during the time the period that you lived in, that what was available to you? So, just think about 100 years from now, if somebody looked back and was like, this was around, what could you maybe fossilize a little bit, do a little rub over? Like it could be maybe a rock or a toy in your house, like the remote to your PlayStation. See if you can come up with some creativeness with that. Oh yes. The mom here making sure.
I'm the mom. So make sure that's off.
All right.
Well, thank you for joining us today.
Truly was a pleasure.
And we'll see you. Our next lesson will be about excavating things out of dirt.
You can dig it. We'll see you next week. We'll see you Thursday.
Yep. See ya.